I'm a big YouTuber.
I literally cover court cases for a living.
I'm gonna give you my ID.
I cover the court cases for a living.
Yeah, what up, y'all? Welcome to Crown TV. I am the Crown Prince, aka Mr. Anti-Goofy. You know what not to do in my comments. Shout out to the Anti-Goofy gang. We on our way to 20,000. We in the building. If you want to donate to the channel and you really gang, instead of the super chat, hit up the Cash App gang. Yeah, what up, y'all? We back, and we getting a lot of love out here. I'm extremely appreciative and grateful for all of y'all. I'm glad everybody is enjoying the content. Shout out to the 5 or 6 people who just cannot bear the sound of my voice. I wish that I could change it just so y'all can enjoy the content with the rest of the people. So I'm sorry for that. Shout out to Matiera and Chris Gigi for the Cash Apps. Y'all know I don't do lives as much as I do videos, so I appreciate everybody who takes the initiative and supports the channel through the Cash App. You will not go unrecognized. Also, and these are just a couple things I wanted to run down for everybody. If you are looking for paperwork, the way to go about that is to email me at thecrownprince@gmail.com. I don't send out the paperwork via request in the DM. It's not to be a there is a reason for that. It's much easier for me to just click and reply to an email than to have to type out everybody's email addresses individually. As for CEO Chris, I've gotten like 1,000 requests for paperwork. I do have paperwork on CEO Chris. I've seen about 3 documents floating around. I have those documents, and I've also added about 2 or 3, I think, to it. I don't plan on doing a video on CEO Chris, so if you want that information, you gotta hit up the Gmail. All right, now on to the topic. We're talking about Harv, and we're talking about this charge that the government was thirstily trying to pin on Harv and all the details of why it fell apart. This is actually related to that slashing charge that the government put on Harv way late in the game. That slashing charge that they put on Harv right before the trial is allegedly the result of or in retaliation for the actual charge they wanted to pin on Harv, which is a shooting that happened on October 24th. Now, this became a thing in March. The government introduced the evidence that it had against Harv into the discovery in early March, and this is the first time that we hear about it in these court minutes. This was touched on in 3 different conferences, and I have the paperwork from all 3. And what happens at these conferences is at the beginning of every conference, the judge wants a complete rundown of all of the facts and all of the evidence, new and old, that are relevant to the case. And I'm going to show you why I mention that in a moment. This is the first conference from March 5th, and this is the government running down the parts of the evidence that specifically have to do with testing and lab results. It says, I believe there was a firearm recovered from one of the vehicles. We sent that out for testing. That part is related to Fubanga, and you're going to see these mixed together in all 3 instances because both cases have to do with testing. It says there was an incident which we have produced in the most recent round of discovery, an October 24th shooting that happened in Brooklyn. It is the government's contention that Mr. Ellison was involved in that shooting. We have not charged it separately. We are still investigating it. But there were some items that were recovered that we sent out for testing. There was a firearm and a coat. So that was the entire extent of what was said on March 5th. It was still very early, and the government didn't have any evidence to boot. The next time this is mentioned is at a conference on March 26. The judge is again asking about the state of the discovery since the last conference and whether or not any new discovery has been obtained. The government says one bit of discovery was NYPD reports and surveillance videos surrounding an October 24th shooting in Brooklyn. That has been produced to all defense counsel as evidence of the RICO conspiracy. It has not yet been charged as a separate violent crime in the aid of racketeering. We are still investigating that act of violence. This means they don't have enough evidence to pin it on a particular person yet. The judge asks what is the nature of that and if it's just law enforcement surveillance videos. The government answers that it is surveillance videos and NYPD DD5s. Just for clarity, when DD5s is used, it is referring to paperwork. That is the police reports. The judge asks whether it has been produced or if the government is still preparing to produce it. The government says what we have has been produced. There have been certain DNA swabs taken of certain items that were recovered that evening that have been sent away for testing. We are awaiting the results of that testing. The judge asks whether or not there is any additional discovery that the government intends to produce that they don't have yet. For example, lab results that are still a work in progress. And I'm just skipping forward a little bit till we get back to what's relevant to this video. The government says, as to the other DNA evidence, this relates to an October 24th, 2018 shooting in Brooklyn. There was a shooting in the street. The government contends that the shooter ran down the street and discarded a jacket underneath a car. DNA was taken from the neck and cuffs of that jacket. The judge asked, when you say that DNA was taken from the cuffs, what exactly was on the neck and cuffs? The government says they tested to see if DNA was present. They determined that there was DNA on the cuffs that was suitable for comparison. We then compared that DNA to a swab that was taken from Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison was excluded as a contributor to the DNA that was recovered from that jacket. The judge asks, what, if I may, was the basis for your assumption that Mr. Ellison was the discarder of the jacket? The government says it was based on witnesses, Your Honor. The judge asks whether or not there is a video of the incident. The government says there is a video, but you cannot make out the face of who's on the video. But based on witness statements as to the circumstances surrounding that shooting, it was the government's belief that Mr. Ellison was a participant in that shooting. The judge asked, is the statistical significance of the exclusion of Mr. Ellison as overwhelming as you say the evidence of the inclusion of Mr. McKenzie was to the water bottle? The government then confirms he is excluded as a contributor to the mixture that was taken from the cuffs and the neck. He says there were gloves that were also in the jacket, Your Honor. Per OCME policy, they would not test the gloves. So the government is sending these gloves out to a private laboratory for testing. Now the judge goes on to asking about the testing of those gloves and ultimately asks for a time frame for when that testing would be done. The government says approximately 5 weeks. Now in comes Mrs. Scolari, and Mrs. Scolari is not even Harv's lawyer. And she does what any good lawyer would do in a situation like this, where obviously things are starting to get funny. She said, can I ask a question along those lines? The judge asked her to speak up. She said, yes. I'd like to ask a question along those lines. It may not have anything to do with my client, but the government has indicated that they had a test done on a jacket based on witness testimony that seemed to implicate Mr. Ellison. He has now been ruled out. So is it the government's position that the witness was mistaken or the witness didn't have sufficient ability to see? Or is it that maybe the cooperator wasn't telling the truth? Kaboom. The judge says, my name is Bennett and I ain't in it. That's between y'all. Mrs. Scolari says, oh yeah, this gonna be a problem, bruh. All right, I'm getting silly, y'all, but it's because we closing in. But even the judge at this point starts asking a lot of questions about what's going on here. The government has to then go on and do some explaining, and I'm not going to bore y'all with that. I always want to keep these videos within a good time frame. I don't want to hold y'all just to be holding y'all. Again, if you want the paperwork, you can always hit me up at thecrownprince@gmail.com. Now, there's 3 conferences that took place after this for which the paperwork is not available yet. It is within that time frame that the government went from charging Harv with this shooting that they were so thirsty for to the slashing that Harv allegedly did in retaliation for what happened in that shooting. If you don't know, somebody was permanently changed from that shooting. He's paralyzed. The strange circumstances and details of how that happened were actually brought up at the trial. I'm not going to discuss that in this video because I want to keep this as a timeline of events. So I'm likely going to follow up as the paperwork is released. I think that's it for now. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this in the comments, man. Like, comment, subscribe if you are not a goofy. If you are not a goofy. If you are a goofy, you know the rules. It's the Crown Prince. I'm out, y'all.
On a Friday night at 9 o'clock, hundreds of kids who don't have to be here. You'd think this would be the last place they'd want to be. But here in Newark, they're in here because of what's out there.
Anything that keeps me off the street, I'll do. Like, besides doing anything wrong, like selling drugs and all that stuff. I'm not into that.
If I come here, I will see, like, friendly faces.
Gun violence, like, out there, they fighting, being shot.
Inside the walls of West Side High, every Friday night until 11 p.m., it's a space free of fear. Within these walls, kids can shoot pool, play video games, hit the hardwood, practice cheers, or even lay down track in a recording studio. Within these walls, they can laugh. It's called the Lights On program, now in its 4th year, and it's open to everyone. Nadia Camacho graduated in 2008.
If it was around back then, I think that we wouldn't have lost so many of my classmates. Like, if we have a class reunion now, a lot of my classmates wouldn't be there.
I haven't lost any more kids to gun violence since we started doing the school year.
Principal Akbar Cook says you can't ignore the results. If you remember him, that's because last summer, Eyewitness News told you about a free laundry room he installed in school. Students bullied because of dirty clothes, resulting in chronic absenteeism. Principal Cook says there's been a 10% increase in daily attendance since.
I was finding out just from being a principal that the kids don't eat during the weekends.
They also serve hot meals to kids on Friday nights. During the summer, they do this 3 nights a week. It's all made possible by donations from the community and alumni. It's kind of amazing what a school can become when people care about kids who just want a chance.